Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Carlton Wrap mid-season review. Today, I'm joined by a couple of guests that you will all see throughout the video. But the first one today is someone everyone will definitely know, Terry Dehghani from Blue Abroad. Welcome back, Terry. How have you been since we've last chatted?
I've been great, mate. 8-3 at the bye, halfway through the season. Happy days.
So, obviously, it's been a lot since we last chatted. It's 13 games if you include the pre-season, and what we're going to do is go over rounds 1 to 3. You'll hear Pommy go through rounds 4 to 6, Kirra 7 to 9, and Ari rounds 9 to 11. This is part 1, and part 2 will be with Ari, where we go through player by player. Let's go cast our minds back all the way to, pre-March now, February, where we're at Icon Park for that St Kilda game. First look at a new Michael Voss team. And, yeah, it was great to see the boys come out against the St Kilda team, who now we look in the exact same record, 11 rounds in. What did you make of those first two games, that one and the Melbourne game where we knocked off the Premiers, which felt good, even for a practice match?
It did. I think if I cast my mind back, it actually feels like yesterday. I remember the conversations that we were all having about pre-season and, what do you want to see? And I think a lot of us were still really mad about what happened last year and what had happened over the last couple of seasons when we had underperformed. And I think we all felt that we had a group that was just not getting the most out of themselves. So I still remember going to that practice match against St Kilda and thinking, all right, can we please see something that resembles something like a game plan, something that tells us that something's changed and that we're going to do things differently. We had seen some open training sessions and we had seen the intensity. And to be fair, we had seen that last year and the year before as well. The St Kilda game was the start of that. I think we started that game very well. I still remember the Saints coming back into it and being a bit patchy. It was a practice match. It probably wasn't until the Melbourne game, which, when you look back now, I remember the commentary after the Melbourne game talking around, we don't really care. It's a practice match. But when you look back now, it actually set the foundations for what we were going to do, because we did see something different.
Well, I look back to 2021 as well, where we conceded 126 points against St Kilda in a practice match, and that set us up. I think that set us up poorly, whereas this year, even like to beat the reigning premier with a big practice match or not, just held us in good stead going to round 1. So let's move straight into round 1. And personally, I think it was the most nervous I've ever been going into round 1, and that's based off really since I was, 7 years old, about 11 round ones. That was the worst I'd ever felt. Nearly full MCG and sitting around quite a lot of Richmond supporters drove me nuts. And look, we didn't get off to a great start and down 20 points at quarter time, worked our way back in. Some special moments in that game we'll talk about. And that last quarter was nothing like I would have expected. But I'll give you one moment that I thought, this is where I knew, geez, we're actually in it and we're not giving up. We were down 20 points in that fourth quarter, and this is right on the win in the centre, and Kirra looked to the scoreboard and he didn't put his head down. And I was like, okay, we're still in this. We've actually got a chance. And we kicked, 7 goals in a row. And I've got to say, it's probably one of our top games. And that's coming off seeing very little wins in person. So, yeah, it was quite an amazing game. What were your thoughts? Because, you've pretty much gone through the exact same as the younger generation as well. So how was that for you? What was that experience like?
Yeah, going into the game, there was a feeling of nothing's really changed until we beat Richmond. Then we'll know that things are starting to change. And I remember Shai Bolton kicking the goal in the fourth quarter and Richmond are up by 21. And I remember we had played relatively well. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's going to happen again. And then we responded straight away. I think Jack Martin kicked the goal to get us going. And then obviously hit the lead. The moment I realised when we had won the game was a very special one. And, watching the Richmond supporters leave, and then I stood up and I just asked them really simply, where are you going? Like, the game's not over yet. And to be able to do that was very, very great. And, those are the moments you have to remember forever. I think, the turning point is the one that we've been waiting for. And, Richmond in many respects was the most important win of all of them. I think the Sydney game was important. A lot of the wins are important, but the Richmond game in round one was really the one that we just had not been able to get over the line in for far too long. So that was a special night.
It wasn't. Back to the special moments. Obviously, Sam Doherty, after what he's done, to come back, that goal in the second quarter, I don't think I've ever gone up so much. And I think it made me more annoyed that you had Richmond supporters booing him. And I get it. People boo players. But I thought, geez, whistling's all right. But to boo a guy who, in the circumstances, everyone knows what that kick meant, I was like, stick it up there, get stuff. But that was a great moment. What did you think of that? Because that was just went around the AFL world really quickly.
Yeah, I think it's the moment of the season already. I don't really care too much for booing. I don't think they're booing Sam Doherty as the guy that had cancer in a disrespectful way. I think they're just booing the opposition. And it's just a way to try and get him off his game. At the end of the day, all that matters is it went through. And that was a very special moment. That meant a lot. Because for a lot of us, I'll speak on my behalf, I was really cautious of what to say about Doc in the preview of the season. And when I do the player previews for every year, it's what kind of expectation can you put on him? Can he just play a game? Not only has he played a game, he's back to his best. He's kicked a goal in that game as well. So, yeah, those are the moments you have to treasure for sure.
And that put us 1-0 after 10 years of round one losses. So, look, it was probably the first one I remember. I remember 2012, but not enough where it sticks. So this was the first one. I was like, wow, it was insane. And then let's move into round two, where Western Bulldogs, a Thursday night, the worst type of fixture in my opinion. And I thought this was probably going to even be tougher than round one, purely because the Dogs lost to Melbourne, and usually teams, they want to come out and they want to make up for that round one loss. And I thought that was even better than the Richmond game. We really just took it to another level, and I thought that comeback that the Dogs had was a bit worrying, because you think, is this going to keep happening? And it has, but we've kept our lead, that's the sign of maturity for me. I think, Carlton teams in the last 2 or 3 years would not have been able to do that at all. And leaving the stadium, I have never heard a crowd so rowdy and loud, obnoxious even, one of those why people hate Carlton supporters, but in the best way possible. And that was, I think that beat the Richmond game in my opinion. From your end, how'd you feel?
It's pretty confident going into that, and the reason is because we've for whatever reason, we've played well against the Dogs for years. Even when we lost last year, we were up by 28 at three-quarter time. We seem to, everyone's got a bunny team, and we seem to be the bunny team for the Dogs. It's the matchups, it's the height, especially at Marvel, under the roof, dry conditions. Looking back when we had all the tools in the team, it creates problems for them. I went to the round one match that the Dogs played against the D's, and I remember watching them look really poor, really, really poor in that first half. And, but for the inaccuracy of Melbourne, they probably would have been down by a lot more. They probably should have been down by 8 goals. And I mean that. And so I remember going into round two thinking, there's something going on with the Dogs. They're a little fractured. Bevo was really angry. There was just murmurs. There's things going on. They just weren't themselves. And, you ask the question, is it the grand final loss? Has it impacted them a little bit? And so I wasn't anywhere near as nervous for that game as what I was round one. But then the ball bounces and you just hope for the best. Got the best result possible. Got the win. Got on top of them early and did the majority of our work early in the game, and earned ourselves the win with how hard we worked early in the game. You got to remember as well, we knew back then in round one and round two, probably for the first month, and maybe even for the first half of the year, that the first 4 rounds were just not going to be anywhere near as good as what the last 4 were going to be. And we were always going to be getting better. So not that I was prepared to lose, but I was prepared to understand that there might be bumps along the way, and I was hoping for a few bits of luck to come our way. But the boys worked hard, got the job done, 2-0, and we're flying. We've beaten two teams, who are bona fide. Richmond, just a great side. You always give them respect. And the Dogs paid off in their granny. You look back now, the Tigers are back to their best. And the Dogs probably haven't quite hit their straps, but they're not the worst team. So they're still both formidable opponents. And I do remember leaving that stadium that night. That was a lot of fun.
I've got a question for you now. Charlie and Harry combined for 9 goals that night, which is pretty big. And look, I don't really remember the Fev period of the club. I remember the last year. Does Charlie and Harry, and I can't really pick out one, but do you reckon that combo beats seeing Fev on a Saturday afternoon at the G?
Nah. Nah, not yet. They've got to earn the right. I think they can do it, no doubt about it. The hottest ticket in town. I think Charlie's the showstopper. I think Harry just kicks a lot of goals, if that makes sense. He just puts them through. Whereas Charlie's got Fev attributes. He's a bit of a showstopper. He rises. He lifts for the occasion. Favola, you got to earn the right to be put in the same sentence as Fev, and I think they can be. But I don't think they've earned that right just yet.
We also on the topic of round 2, and I think this is something we forget as well. I'm pretty sure that was the round Voss was out with COVID, so it was a depleted coaching lineup. Were you impressed that there was like you said, no bumps on that during that round 2 game? We seemed to transition completely fine from coach to assistant. So that's something that's impressed you?
Yeah, for sure. It was one of the many challenges that we've faced up until, filming this right now. That was the first real test. No coach, assistant coach comes in. How committed are the boys? How clear is the game plan? Obviously, Ash Hansen comes from the Western Bulldogs, so he really understands them. And it was a good solidifying win, not only for the playing group, but also for the coaching group and, I guess, the fans' faith in the coaching group and in the direction. That was a very important chapter in the story of the new coaching staff, I think.
Well, let's move on to round 3. This was Hawthorn Sunday afternoon. I didn't get to watch much of this, so I'm giving you what I remember. And I remember sort of seeing that we got up by 40 points. And for me, all I've seen against Hawthorn is losses. So that's really all I know against Hawthorn is losing. So I wasn't very confident even going into this game, even just going off 2 really good wins. I always think Hawthorn is always going to be a close game, sadly, depending on even if we're miles ahead, which it seemed like we were. And then Hawthorn worked their way up. So, I mean, it became a very early trend that we would look to get teams early, but we'd fatigue and teams would work back into the game. And we held on, and I was very relieved, but I was also very angry because I feel like we owe Hawthorn a lot more than what that final scoreline suggested. Seemed like they were a big crowd. Tell me your experience from being at the game that day. What was it like, the emotion? Because 3-0 was obviously something we hadn't done since 2012 as well.
Oh, that was a very, very fun day at the footy for the first half, and then it was squeaky bum time for the second half. But what we were able to do in the second quarter was one of the first few times we had seen it. And for all the talk about letting teams back in and being inconsistent, I mean, people have one of 2 views, the optimistic view or the pessimistic view. If you got the pessimistic view, the first thing you'll look at is, we let teams in. If you have the optimistic view, you look at, shit, when we're on, we're on. And that second quarter against the Hawks, or let's just call it the first half, that was scintillating. That was one of the first few times we'd seen us be able to pile it on like that. And it was a window into what was possible. Obviously, the Hawks came back in, not great. We want to be able to manage games, but it's a game of football. It's a game of runs. Proud clubs always respond. Hawthorn are a proud club. You got to give them credit as well. They're well coached. Sam Mitchell's on the job as well now. So, he did some things. I remember they really shut down the corridor and we almost went back into our shells. And went back into old Carlton and weren't able to figure our way through it. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen from time to time. And I remember not being too angry about it, just grateful that we got the win. Because again, I knew that, and I expected that in the first month or first 4 to 6 weeks, there were going to be inconsistencies. And I was just hoping that we didn't have to pay the price of a loss for too many of the inconsistencies. And gladly we didn't. We got the win, 3-0. I still remember the fan cams of that day.
I mean, it's just extremely weird thinking back. And, I say it with Kirra later on this video. It's like, wow, we won those games. And it's weird looking, and you look at a result and you think, oh, did we win that? I don't remember winning it. I just remember winning it. It makes no sense. But when you lose so much, it's like you just don't think these results are really happening. And to look at the ladder and you're 12 from 12 points. And it's just been very weird in the best way possible. And it's something we'll look back on and think, and hopefully we look at it and think we took that opportunity. And I'm hoping it's, not the opposite. I want to ask you about your main man, because I feel like having you on here, I have to ask about number 19, Corey Durden. What have you made of his season? He's definitely shown what he's capable of, and probably even more.
Yeah, he's a really good human, first and foremost, and most importantly, hardworking. He thrives on the hard work. He loves the tough stuff. He gets a kick out of the pressure stuff. And round one, I went into the season hoping he'd be able to do something like what he did in round one, maybe later in the year. I did not expect him to be able to break through and have a performance like that so early in the year. So it was really pleasing for him to get his confidence up. And, as we sit here, it's very proud and very grateful to be able to be sponsoring him, and to know that you got a good one, and you got one right, and you got one that's not only a good player but just a good person and committed to the cause. He's really special. And
obviously 3 rounds in, it was our, I guess, 5 games seeing our new players, Adam Cerra, George Hewitt. I'm sort of blanking with that, but those were our 2 main ones. What have you made of them after 11 rounds? But after 3 rounds, were you like, wow, this is exactly what we expected, or were you even more surprised?
I was probably even more surprised. I mean, I knew Hewitt was good. I did not know that he was that good and that consistent. After 3 rounds, I'm thinking we've absolutely nailed, and I still think we've absolutely nailed it. We've got the recruits bang on. They are the exact thing that we needed in that midfield, that real grunt. And we identified a need and we filled it with good experience, but still at a good age bracket. And all of a sudden, all the talk about giving up pick 6 for Cerra, we don't even talk about it anymore. It's you pay up for what you get, and he's been great for us.
And the one I did forget, Lewis Young. What have you made of him so far?
Very surprised, I'll be honest. I watched him in the first open training session, just looked a little unsettled. And to be fair, he's in a new environment. It's probably unfair for me to even say that. He might have just had a few bad possessions, and I'm basing it off that. But he looks comfortable. Now that he started to take the marks, the intercept marks, he's really started to get comfortable within himself. You're going to talk about it later in the video, but I think the North Melbourne game is really the welcome to Carlton game for him for a couple of reasons. And he's really endeared himself, and I now have faith that he's definitely going to be the next key pillar with Jacob Wiedering that'll lead us forward, because that was the big question mark going in. What do we do without Jones? And now we don't even worry about it, because Lewis Young will be that for us.
100%. Before I move on to my next guest, I want to get you to give me your back half of the season predictions. And look, I listened to what you said pre-season, and it was pretty optimistic. You said you just want to be competitive, not look at the, was how many tackles did we lay in this half, and if it was much lower than what we wanted. You're very optimistic, and I think your pre-season prediction has come true so far. Hopefully it sticks for the back half. But tell me, back half, what do you expect in win-loss record, and where do you want to be come the end of October when the whole season's finished?
Get to 12 wins. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care who we win, who we lose to. Get to 12 wins, because 12 wins gets you into finals, and that's it. Just whatever it takes to get to minimum 12 wins. Just we've got 8 so far after 11. We've got 11 more. We've got some tougher opponents, I feel, in this 11. So, 50% of our games, if we win them, it gives us enough wins to play finals football. So get to 12 and I'm a happy man.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me, Terry. And yeah, look forward to chatting in the future.
Likewise, mate. Take it easy.
Now on to the second guest of the mid-season review, PommyInOz. Welcome back, Pommy. How have you been since we last chatted?
Oh, good. I mean, 8-3, can't complain. We're flying. Destination finals is halfway done. So excited to see how we finish after the bye.
Well, look, you've probably got the hardest part of this review, 2 of the 3 losses in your 3-round segment. So we'll start with our first loss of the season, and we all went into this thinking, 4-0, it's right around the corner. Haven't done it for so long, and yeah, it wasn't what we expected. It's a very tough game, and I think we look back at this and think, well, Gold Coast have actually played some good football up at Metricon, and they love those conditions, and I think it just all fell apart. Cripps went off early. I think it didn't really go right, and I think that was a good lesson to have taken that loss early on. And look, it wasn't a great performance, but it showed that there's definitely some improvement. So what were your thoughts from that game?
It was a weird one, wasn't it? Because, I mean, at this stage of the season as well, a lot was made in the press about our dominance around stoppage and clearance and how we were very one-dimensional, and this was our only scoring option. And this was a game that probably made that come true. Gold Coast dominated stoppages and clearances and outscored us from that. And obviously, Cripps didn't see out the game. So, I mean, that's one of them things. But we lost clearance count by 18, and it was coming in so easily. And fair play to Gold Coast. Maribor, Cho and Rosas took us apart, really. We had no real answer to that. And I think the biggest thing for me was it was a return to, I don't want to say Teague ball, but they'd started really well all season up to this point, and they looked switched off the minute the opening bounce. They didn't have them energy levels, and it was probably a humbling loss for them, because obviously 3-0, you've taken out one of the favourites, Doggies, you've taken out Richmond, who you haven't done. Confidence was very high at this point, and it was kind of maybe a grounding to show the job's not complete yet.
Yeah, well, look, it actually seemed at the start we were on, because I'm pretty sure we kicked the first goal and we seemed switch on, and then completely turned around from there. And like you said, and that was a worry, that we had this one brand of clearance, getting the clearance and working from there, and we couldn't win those clearances. And I don't know, Gold Coast just seemed to know where they were going at every time, and we seemed to not. Pretty much the opposite, and it was a bit concerning. And I feel like there wasn't a plan B ready. And I guess losing one of your main, your captain hurts you, and it's hard to work around it at times. But I think our prep work sometimes has been exposed, and I think we could talk about that more with the Fremantle game as well. But I think that was a major problem early on. But one other quick talking point: what did you make of Levi Casbolt with pulling the Gold Coast shirt after his goal?
Well, I mean, I don't buy into. I know a lot of Carlton fans were like, "Oh, wish him well" and stuff. I'm old school. Once you leave the club, I couldn't really give a shit about you. I thought that backed my argument up. I remember I said on the live, every time he gets the ball, I'll boo him. He's no friend of mine. And I think I was proven right. I do think, I understand where Levi's coming from. Obviously, it would have hurt for us to cut him, because effectively we got rid of him. But on the other token, I think Levi is very fortunate to have had a career as long as he had at Carlton Football Club. So I do think, for me, I look at the soccer mentality. Players have left us because they're old or not good. Genuinely, though, there's a bit of mutual respect. You don't celebrate over your team regardless of how you've left that club. And for me, I didn't like it. But I mean, then again, he had a proper Levi Casbolt game, didn't he? 1 goal, 2. 2 of them goals were easy as for a man of average caliber. So I mean, he summed himself up for me. He said more about him than it does anyone else.
Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't really see the value of holding a Gold Coast logo. I'm not really sure what that club means to anyone. The one thing that annoyed me, and it was one of those games where we brought a player like that has not been seen back into form. That was Malcolm Roses. Now, I'm sure you would have known who he was, but I don't think a lot of people knew who he was. Were you surprised when he kicked 3 goals on us?
No, in the draft, he was one of my guys that maybe you had the sniff at. We actually covered him. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's got something about him. I was maybe surprised how soon in his career he showed that. I think that's very capable. He's a very crafty footballer, very intelligent, but he suits them conditions. If the ball is greasy, as it often is when you play in Gold Coast, he excelled. And I mean, I think from a Carlton point of view, it was very easy to be a forward. We had no forward line pressure. I mean, the 3 staples of Voss's game, stoppage, clearance, and forward pressure, just didn't happen. So for a player like Malcolm, when the ball is coming in that easy with that much time, he's going to do some damage. And it was exceptional, really, and masterclass from the young gentleman.
It was. He did play well, and I think, I think people did sort of see that and think, who is this guy and how has he kicked 3 on us? But he has proven to show his talent throughout these last 7 rounds after our game. Let's move on to round 5. So this is the Port Adelaide game, Easter Sunday. So I mean, I know myself, I didn't get to watch much of this, and I'm sure a lot of people probably didn't get to watch much of this game. It's pretty important in terms of bounce back, because this is the first time we'd properly been tested after a loss to see if we would just crumble under pressure, because Port Adelaide were 0-4 from memory. So sort of felt like one of those, here we go, this really could kill us. 49 points up in the second quarter. And look, I was fairly confident Port Adelaide would work themselves back into the game, and they did. And I've sort of figured that I think it's a good thing that our game plan is to get ahead early, but we also fatigue a lot. What were your thoughts? Because you obviously have done all the watch-alongs this season, so you've seen these games inside and out.
Well, I mean, it was probably the perfect way to respond. There was much made after this game. Carlton were ranked 18th from scores from turnover, and I did a load of posts to say it's a fallacy. The media aren't looking at it. Carlton are capable of it. It's just the way the game is going at the moment for us. We're prioritising one area. But that half time, I mean, 39 points from Carlton was pure turnover and forced turnover from pressure. And it was a great bounce back because it was a different Carlton. The pressure was there from the off. They made everything count. There was, from the Gold Coast game where we overused the ball an awful lot, I think it was averaging something like 12 touches to an inside 50. They proper half that. They looked like they were moving with purpose. They came to play. And really, it was kind of the mirror opposite of Port last year, where Hinckley famously said at halftime, we put the cue in the rack and we were thinking about finals and we started to slow our tempo down. Carlton had won that game at halftime. They only kicked, what was it, four goals after that? The game was iced from the Blues, and it was a total complete performance in that first half. The boys blew Port Adelaide off the park, and that really at that point, it was probably the best football Carlton has seen for many a year in that first half.
Well, what I saw the bit of the first quarter, and I thought, okay, good start. I'm not sure whether we'll actually get to a significant lead. And I mean, I still haven't seen that second quarter, but it seems like it just continued. And then I saw snippets of the third quarter and thought, it's like it's happening again. And then they held on, and I've noticed that we seem to hold on leads for a long time in the last quarter. And an example, we go back to Sydney. Papley kicked that goal with, I think, 11 and a half minutes left, and they were only 10 points down. Hawthorn, I think it was Bruce, kicked the goal with 8.5 minutes, and we seem to keep leads for a long time. I think that's a very good thing. I think that's a good maturity thing, holding on, keeping to your structure, to your game plan, which they clearly trust. Have you seen that? Is that something you've noticed?
Yeah, I don't really look, particularly in the early season, I don't count these as fade outs. I think when you look at, have an understanding of what Voss does, it's very ball retentive, and all this year has shown any side can beat anyone. Any side can beat anyone. I would say this year is the tightest we've got from 2nd to 12th. It's the tightest. I think Melbourne showed a bit of vulnerability the week just gone, but I do think Melbourne are head and shoulders above every other side. But I think when you look at like the Port Adelaide game, case in point, Carlton dominated possession in the fourth, dominated it. And yes, Port got close, but if you actually look at it, and I've rewatched that fourth quarter, I wouldn't say they were threatened. I think Carlton always had enough to go, and I think you look at Port's third quarter, they were magical. That was as close to Port finals Port we've seen. And it was near perfect football. It was very Geelong when we clung on and Eddie Betts made that life-saving tackle in 2020. It had them vibes where everything went right for them, everything. There was some stages as well where Boak could have probably kicked it with his pinky finger and it would have gone 75 metres, hit a seagull and landed in the arms of a forward. But Cowan did the things well in them second half, leading the ground ball gets by 17, loose balls, tackle pressure was up. They played pure defensive football and they clung on to a very rampant Port side. So character building win. I think people forget this side is still serial losers. It's what they're specialised in. Specialists in failure is this 22. So learning to win is very hard for them. And I thought this was a cracking game. It was a very character building game because Port had it all to lose. And they played that second half like a boxer behind 12 rounds, 1 minute to go. And all he's got to do is throw his hands. And Carlton just had to halt, just cover up, just get to the final bell. And they did. And yeah, it wasn't the prettiest in the end, but they got the win.
I mean, it's good that we're finally returning what teams have done to us for the last 6 or 7 years. And this is what I think a lot of us have waited for so long that I don't care if you give up that lead. I just want to beat these teams that have done it to us for so long. And I'll quickly touch on our two main forwards. And I've been asking everyone so far about, Charlie and Harry. Charlie kicked 5 on this day, Harry 3. Who's the most influential? And I know Harry's out at the moment, but with both of them, who do you think is the most, who's going to win you the game?
I think they're both game winners. I think we're very fortunate in a way to do this comparison because Harry's injured. And last year, Harry did it on his own without Charlie. And you've got to remember last year, Harry had a hell of a lot more help. So he had Levi there. He had forwards that could body. He had TDK roaming up there as well. Pitternet when he rested. And Charlie, in these batches of games since Harry, has literally done it on his own with guys that shouldn't be anywhere near the key positions. These guys are makeshift key position players. Harry's always had someone who is a registered key forward. So in my opinion, I said it at the start of the year, Charlie Kerner will be the leading goal kicker in the comp, 70 goals plus. And I say that because I don't think there's any player in football who's as good as Charlie Kerner. I think for me, if you asked every opposition coach, who would you not want to play? They're all going to say Charlie because Charlie can play on the deck. Charlie can play in the air. You look at their stats this year to last year, they're almost identical in contested marks, in grabs. Big differences. Charlie works very hard up the ground, naturally from that full forward position as well when he oscillates there. And I think both of them, it's hard to split them. It's like, who's your favourite kid? But I do think Charlie is on his day, and I think by the end of this season, he'll get the respect he deserves. I think he is the best player in football. I don't think there's anyone that comes close to Charlie Kerner.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. It's a very good call. Zach Fisher's another one I want to touch on. Kicked a very good goal that game. What have been your thoughts about him so far? Because his stats, he's in the elite category for quite a lot from memory. What have you made of him? Because obviously he copped a lot of criticism at the back end of 2021. How have you seen his season so far?
I think Fish is a very interesting player in the terms of that when Carlton fans say who's your most improved, Lockie O'Brien would be in that conversation probably. I'd say players like Sardi, who got a lot of criticism since he's come here, he's been sensational. Matt Kennedy would be in the conversation. I think for me, Zach Fisher is miles ahead and probably doesn't get the reputation and the kudos. I remember when he had the Sticks Kernahan hair, everyone was saying, who does this guy think he is? He thinks he's better than he is. I think he's a guy who's relished Vossi. And I think Vossi, I said it at the time when Teague said that he was a forward. He wasn't a mid. And I thought that's balmy. I think Fisher is a mid. I think he needs mid-time. He's now one of the rotations on the wing. You see Vossi, when the game is tight, people forget he turns to Zach Fisher quite often to go on the ball, particularly around stoppages. He gets that responsibility, which is a big boy's job. And I think Zach Fisher has been remarkable. And I think the big difference in Zach Fisher is probably a coach has shown him faith in how good he could be. And I think that's Vossi's strength. You hear Port Adelaide, Vossi was very like putting his arms around you. Carl Amon's come out and said it. Ollie Wines credited him in the Brownlow year, saying that it was Vossi who believed. And I think Fisher's been sensational. And I think long may it continue, because I think he is a player that probably will go under the radar in the opposition for quite some time. And he's someone who can win you a game. But that Port game, what was it? 2 goals, 22 touches. He was in just about everything. He was supreme. So, and he literally was the perfect Zach Fisher. 60% forward time, 40% midfield. He was everywhere. So yeah, Zach Fisher, credit to you, mate. He's got it all at the moment, and very exciting player.
On to round 6, the second loss of the season against the Dockers, and I personally think this is probably the most disappointing one, purely because of how even we were with Fremantle. I thought it was a good game to show that we could beat a team that is around us. And I know going to Perth is, I mean, I'm not sure, but you could probably assume it's the hardest road trip, or hardest trip in AFL to go over there. But we seem to have a good record against them over there, so I was not too worried about the whole it's in Perth, because if it was West Coast, different story, but Freo, we seem to always give them a good battle. And I thought this was probably worse than the Gold Coast game, purely because I don't think we tried anything new or attempted to switch anything. It was just purely Freo knew what they wanted to execute, and they did it well. Their transition work was just right on from the start, and they exposed our back line, spread out. They were just doing all the right things, and I don't think we were prepared to tackle what they were going to throw at us. I think we were expecting for our centre clearance game to work, and it just didn't. And he didn't pick up at any point, and I was pretty disappointing. I think it was the first game where 4 quarters were just really disappointing, and there wasn't really a glimpse of we might be in this. But yeah, that was the worst for me. How did you see that play out?
It's a weird game because, I mean, I remember the first 15 minutes before Pitt went off, and that had all the hallmarks, that game, of Carlton running over the top of them. Pitnet and TDK were baffing Rory and Darcy. Like, they had no answer, and it had the hallmarks of Carlton are going to open this side up. And we saw a new trend of Carlton when an injury happens to a very cornerstone system player. We start to fall back. We start to not so much trust our system. And I think this team buy-in that Vossi talks about, next man up, be there for your teammate. I think the one negative of that is it can supersede what your structure is, in the terms of, we saw it against Collingwood, we saw it against Gold Coast when they panicked, and we saw it massively against Fremantle, where Vossi's system requires the midfield to be in the back line to mop up and be in the forward line to create numbers. And the midfield work incredibly hard. And so does the half forward line and the half back line in opposite transitions. In the forward half, you see the half back line push up and really condense the ground. You see the half forwards, the small guys, Durden and Owies, get in the back line quite often. It's a very big system, but it requires discipline. And when Pittonet went off, you saw Carlton start to react to the fact they weren't getting first use. And it's not TDK's fault. TDK probably wasn't expecting to do 90% ruck work. He was expecting just to pinch hit. You saw how effective Pittonet and TDK worked against Dogs, that we could throw TDK in when the rucks were tired, and that extra agility killed them. So then Pittonet rest in the forward line. And fair play to Fremantle, they were a very good outfit. Once they started to get a bit of confidence, gain it, they could take Carlton's ability away from the centre clearances, which at the time we were number one in the comp. And yeah, Fremantle took advantage of Carlton's maybe indecision, and that second quarter from them, it blew Carlton away. And by the third, the job was too good. There was a wee bit of a fight back in the fourth. The boys came back a little bit and broke even. But by that stage, you could see that whatever the game plan was destroyed. Harry spent time as well getting injured in the first quarter. He kind of started the injury woes. But yeah, it was a disappointing game. But fair play to Fremantle. Fremantle, when you smell blood, good teams kill you, and they killed us.
Do you back us in, what is it, about 5 weeks' time in the return fixture?
100%, yeah. I think if Vossi should on anything at this stage, he's got mongrel spirit. And I don't think he wants to have a losing record of any side he plays to us. I think that'll be a big thing for Voss. I think if I was Collingwood and I was Fremantle, I wouldn't want to play Carlton, because I think that Voss will look at them and go, we owe them, we owe them. And both of them losses been massive structural injuries in game, which it's hard to change. It's hard to change. And do you know what I mean? You can't have a ruck as your emergency on your sub bench. Do you know what I mean? It would have been a very bold call against Collingwood to have Kemp, you know, as opposed to a midfielder that gives you a bit of versatility. Carroll probably, if we're honest, was the logical sub there in this game. Do you know what I mean? It was a logical sub, a guy that can play 3 lines. It's a tough call. So I would say Carlton would fancy themselves against Freo. They don't travel well, Fremantle.
Well, that wraps up the 3 rounds we're talking about. And before we close, I want to know your second half season predictions. What are you expecting record-wise, win-loss? And if it is finals, where do you want us to get to by the start of October, really?
Well, I mean, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, looking at the injury list now, if you're really, 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 really negative, and you look at guys who are injured, guys who are coming back, you're looking at probably 4 or 5 weeks until we have close to a full allotment. We'll pick up a key position player in the draft. I would say Carlton will be looking Essendon win. I think the St Kilda and GWS games are probably 50-50. I'd favour Carlton in the GWS game, though, here. I think then you've got Richmond. I think Richmond will be tough. I would say Carlton will be looking at probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. That they're saying that they're odds-on favourites, that they're confident, which would put us at the magical 13. And I don't think in the last 10 years you've never not made finals with 13. I know 12, there's been 2 occasions on percentages killed you. So I think Carlton are still well in with the chance. And I look at the games that are tough, the Brisbane-Melbourne games, the Crows away. Carlton should, by that stage, have a full allotment of personnel. And I think that'll give them an injection. I think Harry coming back 2 weeks, I reckon just about the Richmond game, they might break him out in the Richmond game, dependent on what happens in the Essendon game. I think Carlton will be fine. I think Carlton will finish 6th, and I think we'll play St Kilda.
I agree with that. I agree with 6. I'm not sure. Look, if we, and I've said this later in the video, but if we get a home final, I think we'll win it. That is my guess. I think no matter what Vic team we play, we'll have the majority of the crowd. And I just think it would be hard to lose when you have that, that turn up. But look, I won't speak too soon. I think 6, but I don't know if it'll be 6. So let's hope for the best.
Mate, I think 5 is a dead cert. I think you'd get $1 or $2 if you were betting on that. I do think, though, that if Carlton make finals, I do think it'll be a huge, huge occasion. I think we'll win one. And I think once we're in finals, you would say by week 2 of finals, it would be almost a full allotment of players. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Full allotment of players. And I think there's a lot of players there that are finals players. I'm looking at David Cunningham. I think David Cunningham could have an impact like a Butler had for Richmond in 17, where in them final series, Butler turned into something that we've never seen before. He was a freak. I think Cripper might make Dustin Martin's 2017 final look like child's play as well. I would say Cripper is a guy that has been at this club and probably dreamt of finals. And he's probably thought it's never going to happen. Never going to happen. Yeah. And I would say Cripper, MCG, a semi-final, it remortgage your house, put him down for 40 touches and 3 goals. Because I'll tell you what, I could see Cripper taking the piss when it counts. And I think Cripper will have a huge final series. And so will this man here, Charlie Kerner. Carlton makes finals. I guarantee everyone watching this show now, Charlie Kerner will kick 15 goals in Carlton's finals campaign. That's a guarantee. Take it to the bank.
That is huge. That's really huge. Thank you, Pom. Thank you, Pom, for joining me. And yeah, look forward to chatting soon.
Much love, mate. Thank you very much for having me.
Now on to my third guest, Kirra. Welcome back. We've talked obviously online during the last time we recorded, but tell the audience, what have you been doing, getting up to since we last chatted? And then we'll get on to round 7 to 9.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be part of the first half of the season review. I've been pretty busy. I've just been going to a lot of football. I've been helping out at Coburg's VFL side, so been doing quite a bit with them. Yeah, just going to lots of Carlton games, and then obviously uni, trying to stay on top of all of that, which you know all about, the uni grind. So yeah, I've just been plodding along, doing lots of different things and going to a lot of sport.
Take us into the Coburg VFL Live, because that's quite an important role. So tell us what you do at the club and your role during match days and even during the week.
Yeah, so I'm match day MC for their home games. So I host and MC their pre and post game functions. I interview the coach of our team, the opposition coach, and the Coburg player of the match. And then I just interact with the attendees at the functions. And then I also do what Daniel Gorringe did at the start of the year for Carlton, and at quarter time, half time, 3/4 time, and after the game, I just hype the crowd up, try and get them involved in the game. So that's my role.
Well, if you are down at Piranha Park for a VFL game, make sure to listen out for Kira's voice. You'll definitely hear it. Well, let's move to round 7. Carlton v North Melbourne. This was a game that you didn't think we were going to lose, and no one ever thought we were going to lose. Personally, I'm never optimistic with any game, to be fair. But this one, I feel like we always give North a chance, and I think we did at the start. We definitely did give them a chance, but it always looked like we were on top, even when North were in it. In the second half, we sort of blitzed, got away. What were your thoughts from the game? I wasn't at this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I am the same. I always go into each game a bit worried just because of the history of Carlton in our lifetime. So although I didn't think we would lose this one, I was still worried because, yeah, history tells us we'll probably let this one slip just because of where we were sitting on the ladder compared to where North were, and we were doing considerably better than them at the time. But I think this game just gave us a lot of optimism as a club from what we can do once we put our best footy together. And it also gave us a lot of hope for what Harry and Charlie could look like in the same forward line. I think they did really well together. And I feel like this was the first game I thought they really gelled and they really let each other play a role and weren't overtake one another, or they weren't kind of going to the same contest. I thought they did really well. So yeah, this game was really good from a point of I liked what we saw and we needed to get the win over North. So yeah, I was quite happy with this performance.
Goals on the day. I mean, we just spoke about Harry and Charlie. 4 for Harry, 3 for Charlie. I mean, they clicked very early on, even from round 2. But even though this has been recorded after one of them is out, which we know who it is, it was very promising and it's exciting. I feel like it's the first time we really have seen them together, and I don't remember if they were really playing together 2019-ish, but they're killing it. They really are killing it.
It was magical to watch, and I don't know if this stat still stands as we talk at the moment, but I saw something that said at Marvel Stadium, Charlie and Harry kicked 3 goals each in every one of our games at Marvel Stadium, which is just awesome. Like, to see them both up and about, they're both so good. We know how good Harry is, obviously the reigning Coleman medalist, but to see Charlie alongside him and just the spark he provides, it was really, really magical to watch. And yeah, like you said, it's a shame that one of them's injured at the moment, but hopefully once Harry's back, we can see that again.
Jack Carroll came into the side for this game and
Robbed
kicked his first goal. You can say that. And I mean, as of round 11, he's played 5 games. He kicked his first goal in the first quarter. What are your thoughts of him so far? And I think the Collingwood game was probably his worst in terms of overall performance, but let's look at it through those first 5 games. What are your overall opinions?
I think the game against North was really, really promising, and I really liked what he brought to the table. Yeah, as I said just before, I think he was robbed of the Rising Star nomination in this particular round, but I think he has a lot of potential, and I think he'll be really good for us. I don't think he will keep his position moving forward if we have our best 22 available until he develops a little bit more. But I think what he does bring is really exciting. I think his run is really good. And once he puts on a bit of size, I think he'll be a really important player for us in the long term. So I think with what he brought to the North game was really good. I think he's probably due for a rest if we're quickly jumping forward and reflecting on the Collingwood game. But yeah, I think he'll be good for us in the long run.
Well, I think what I've sort of seen with him is really good inside 50 with his pressure. And I mean, I even saw that when he was playing BFL, he loves to attack the ball and really put some physicality on the opposition. I think where he got a bit lost was moving into the midfield a bit when he had to make himself present leading up. I think he was a bit shocked to really the difference that it is from your forward line to your midfield lines. I think that's where he fell down a bit, especially in the Collingwood game. I think that's where he really felt the pressure. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he might have to lose his spot, but he definitely can regain it. Given, I'm sure there'll be another opportunity. Considering what we've seen, he definitely will impress. I guess Jack Martin was someone who kicked 2 goals on that night. What have been your thoughts of him? Because a lot of people have seen him as a very hot and cold player. Well, since the start of the year.
I can see the argument that he's a hot and cold player, but I think it's just that he's hot is a really, really big spark for us. And when he's not providing that spark, people think he's just gone missing. So I think I can understand the argument of hot and cold, but I think it's just that the spark he brings is so good that then people kind of don't see just the little things that he's doing when he's so-called cold. But I think he's a really important player to our side in the fact that he can play small and he can play tall. I think he can take some awesome grabs that small forwards shouldn't be able to take, and he takes them. So I think once he's fit, he definitely fits in our best 22. And I think he's a really important player for us. Yeah, as I said, because he can play the tall, play the small, and also is a really good pressure player. But I think the most important thing is he's similar to Charlie in the fact that when he's on, he can provide a spark that's really important to us.
Well, I reckon round 7 is not much to talk about, unfortunately, because North is North, and obviously what we've seen about with them, they're not great, are they? But I have no sympathy for them because we did that for 4, 5, 6, 7 years in a row. So, yep, hope you have fun, North. On to round 8, Adelaide. I was at this one, I'm sure you were too. I think this was, like, in all honesty, I think this was our best, look, I would say 4-quarter performance, because that 4th quarter obviously took the foot off, fair enough, fatigue. But I think a game that we just set out to go and smash a team, we did it really well. Yeah, I think that was the basis of it. And Adelaide were a team we need to do that with at home, get the job done sort of thing, especially when you have to go over there later in the season. It's good to get the home one out of the way. What were your thoughts from it?
Yeah, well, the game, we were both at it. The game was pretty dead. I mean, it was Mother's Day, an afternoon game. It was a dead time slot. So we really needed to bring something that made fans smile because, yeah, it was a crappy time. But I think I agree with you in terms of the 4-quarter performance and in terms of just needing to get the win. I know a lot of people have spoken about the danger games. Of course, they're danger games because every game is a danger game when you're Carlton. But I think Adelaide was one I was really worried about because I think of I think it was 22 or those later games where we've versed Adelaide in the past and we should win and we've just fallen away. I think of when Bryce Gibbs retired, that game hurts my soul a little bit still. And so I was worried about the Adelaide game, but I thought they put in a really good performance. It was 3 votes again for Patrick Cripps. I mean, he dominated these few rounds. And I think another thing, our midfield was really dominant. We had 74 to 49 inside 50. So we were just winning all the ball in the middle and going straight forward, which was really good to see.
Charlie kicked 6-3. Could have been 8-1 or 7-2. So it's very scary. And look, I was one of those who sort of thought he would never return to what he did. And not that he didn't have that potential anymore, just you think when someone goes through 2 significant injuries, they're just going to be not very cautious, just not as good as they used to be. But he's such a threat.
He's a massive threat. And I mean, Harry's injury is heartbreaking and it hurts a lot. And we would much prefer Harry to be out there. But I do reflect that it might be good for Charlie in terms of his second phase development, because if Harry was there, Charlie could probably get away with the excuse of I've been out for like the most part of 2 years. I've been injured. I'm still getting used to the game, but he doesn't have that excuse and he doesn't have anyone there to protect him from sort of an off game. He has to be on because he's our only tall forward. So I think in terms of Harry being injured, the only positive that comes from that is Charlie's development. And we'll get into it in the GWS game, but the other things he's doing now as well, not just kicking goals, but trying to bring the ball to ground and get everyone else involved into it. But Harry and Charlie in the same forward line, as we saw in this game also, is just electric. No one can stop it. No one.
Especially at Marvel. I don't know what it is. I mean, I guess ball delivery would be much nicer when you take out wind, etc. But they just seem to click there, and I'm surprised considering it's much more narrow ground compared to the MCG. I'm looking at Charlie's time on ground, and he's 94% time on ground, which is, well, second highest in the team, which is quite astounding when you come off something like that, which I guess it has been quite a long time. But that is, I mean, I know especially in a game, I guess, where the ball was going down, it makes a bit more sense. But that's pretty impressive for a guy that really his primary focus back into like recovery was running. So
I did not know that, and I really like that because I've always questioned why a player goes off as soon as they kick a goal, because they're up and about, they've got energy, like let them get some momentum and kick another one, but they always seem to go straight off as soon as they kick a goal. So I like the fact that Charlie spent so much time on ground when he had such a dominant performance.
And now I'm looking, sort of I've been interested in this time on ground thing, and I don't think it's a stat that's really talked about a lot, which fair enough, it's more of a time management thing, but we're doing 100% time on ground. Does hurt a bit. And I'm sure he does it every game, and I'm only looking at this game in particular. But otherwise, it's fairly spread around. And the younger boys, Dirt and Carroll, much less game time, around 70%. Jordan Boyd is someone on this list that obviously played this game. Look, my thoughts, I'm not overly impressed, and I was never really impressed even when it went back to that St Kilda practice match just before the season started. I personally don't think he has it. I just don't think he brings enough to really cement his spot on the side, which has been proven anyway. But do you think it's worth really continuing on with him?
I think it's worth trying to persist and just see how the rest of the year pans out. I think he could become an important player if we have another injury, because our backline is starting to look a bit depleted. So I think we need to persist with him. But I probably don't see him being in our best 22, say, in 2023. But I think he's good to have and to try and develop in case of an emergency. Like the break glass in case of an emergency, that's him, I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's just, look, I think you can play him against the weaker sides, but I just don't think he will bring anything against your top sides, which you need direct matchups to really win the battles. I just don't think he'll bring that. But yeah, another one like round 7. It's weird. Like after 7 or 8 years of just never having a good smash out win, like 2 in a row, which you never think that would have happened. And it was good because I think our percentage was lower at that point, so we did boost it up quite a bit. But yeah, it's just really weird, isn't it? It's just very, very
really weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird to be good because and I say that with worry because I'm like, I don't want to be jinxing it, but I just think for so long we were so not immune to the feeling of losses because we were all still disappointed and angry, but it just became so normal to feel like that after a game. And now it's really abnormal to be disappointed after a game. And the excitement has taken over, and that's what we look forward to every game, is that feeling of pure elation when that final siren goes. And Carlton crowds have been unreal this year. The AFL says that people don't want to go to the footy. Carlton fans want to go to the footy. And our crowds have been awesome. But I think the feelings of going into each game, and as we said, we both still go in worried, but knowing that our best is better than a lot of teams in the competition. And that's just something we haven't experienced.
It's weird as well. And I'm always a ladder person. So I want to be in the right spot. And I've always been if we win, we're only 1 game off the 8, then we lose. And it's like, oh, great. So we're not just we have to win 2 games. So we have to beat these 2 teams. Where it's now, it's like we're this many games inside the 8. And it's
crazy.
I don't know. Just it's weird. I've had other sports, where teams have been successful, but at different sports, and it's it's a whole different experience. Whereas this is odd.
I was talking to my dad, and my dad's a Collingwood supporter. But I was talking to him just about my worries, and I'm like, oh, Dad, we're in the 8 now, but what happens if something goes terribly wrong? And he said to me, he was like, Kirra, you might look back at this year and think this year was our chance. Why couldn't we have gone into finals, deep into finals this year? I mean, we know we've been pretty unlucky with injuries, but he said, this might be your chance. Just take it, because you'll blink and it'll be over. And I think I've found that a lot. I keep blinking and all of a sudden we've won another game and we've smashed another quarter and Charlie's kicked another 6 goals. And it's like, for so long we were so, it will turn, and now it's turning. It's like, I don't know where to look or how to feel or what to do. It's crazy.
And I think that with 2011 all the time, which I look at that and think we finished 5th, but there were games we could have won at the end there, which would have, got us to 4th, and you would have had a double chance at home. It's like, I'm still filthy about that West Coast semi, and I don't want to talk about it. But look, I totally agree, because there's no reason, and people say all the aim is to make finals, which yes it is, but honestly, if you're in a position where you can make the top 4, then make the top 4.
Exactly right. And then I think about don't get me wrong, I know finals are a different ball game and they're hard to win, but if you're aiming to make finals, you want to aim to win and you want to aim to make it to the grand final. Like, I'm not by any means saying we're going to make the grand final, but like, we don't want to just make finals and then get absolutely smashed and be back at square one in the off season. We want to fight and we want to compete and we want to be seen on the same level as the top tier teams in the AFL. So that's what we need to do.
We're on the well. You know, actually, no, I'm not going to say anything. Let's move on.
Don't say that. Don't say what I knew you were going to say.
No, let's move on. Round 9. This is probably the one we'll talk about the most because this is quite an important game for a lot of reasons. And I think, personally, GWS I always like pencil in as a loss, especially over there. And look, our record suggested it was another loss, and it was great that we finally won a game over there. Giants are always just a dangerous team, and I put them in my top 8. Because I do still think, well, for the most part, at the start of the season, I do think they had a list to nearly win a premiership. Remember, it was over the top, but they've got there before with that type of team, and they've fallen off quite a lot this year. And that was a real tussle of a game, and it didn't help that Leon Cameron had to retire that week. So it was like, these guys have every reason to beat us this week. And that was a real tough win. And I'm really surprised the way that went.
We had every reason to roll over on this game and say it was too hard. It was wet. It was away. It was Leon Cameron's last game, like you touched on. There is no way GWS were going to go into that game without a fight for Cameron because it wasn't like he'd been sacked. They weren't, like he'd left. So they wanted to show him respect and show kind of say thank you. So I definitely penciled this one in as a loss. I thought, like I said earlier, I thought our best was better than GWS's best, but I didn't think we would be able to take it up to them when they have such emotion riding on the game. It was more than just a 4-point game for them. It was, kind of the conclusion of a big chapter of GWS as a team. So, yeah, I was very surprised with this game, but I was extremely proud because I think this was one of the best performances from start to finish that I've ever seen in terms of circumstances.
Well, I mean, and we hadn't won interstate this year, and it's still only an interstate win. We still got a couple more to come, and I think it's hard when you don't travel too much as a big team, but that was another thing. I was like, I'd like to break that streak. We lost to our only 2 losses had come against Gold Coast and Freo, which were both away. And I hate being that team that can't win away in a sense. And I hate teams that aren't Carlton that can't do that. I think they're frauds, and I didn't want to be a fraud either. So I was very happy with that. And we started well. We started really well, but you could tell GWS were going to get their moment, especially, and I think we've noticed this, we'll get out to a really good lead, but we fatigue. Like, we do put a lot of energy in, and we'll, our energy levels will deplete a lot, which is fair enough. So you can expect a team to come back, but it's good that we're building these leads because it would be the opposite way around, and we'd try. With other teams would get out to a lead, we'd try so hard to get back into it, but by doing that, we'd lose all our energy, and it would get even worse.
Absolutely. I mean, realistically, we don't want to be 6 goals in front and then a goal in front with 5 minutes to go. But when you think about it, for a team to come back from 6 goals behind is very difficult. So the likelihood of them winning, even if we do lose a bit of momentum and, it's very difficult. So I think I'll take that over being a tight contest all game and then losing. So, I mean, there's that. And then there's also just the fact that we'd never, like you mentioned, won at Giant Stadium, ever. Never won. And I think they made a big deal of that in the playing group. I think from press conferences and player interviews, I heard that they really wanted to end that situation because you can't never win at a ground. That's just ridiculous. So, yeah, I was really proud.
And now we have, I think we haven't won at Adelaide Oval, possibly. I think that's true. Yeah. I think it's true. So that's another one that we have a chance to later in the year as well with Adelaide. Zach Williams, that's probably it's got to be the major talking point from this game besides, I think he's meant to come back around 18, 19, 20, that sort of back end of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even turn up till week 1 of finals. Yeah, let's talk about it, because it's just killing us, isn't it?
Injuries are killing us, but he needs to play finals.
Yeah.
Like, needs to. I don't see a way that even if we win round 20, so let's say he's not available until week 1 of finals. Also, we're talking on the basis that we make finals, unless something goes dramatically wrong.
Yeah.
But if we make finals, week 1 of finals, even if we've won the last 3 rounds of the season and everyone's playing a role, I think Zach Williams needs to come in, because he has finals experience. Finals is a different ball game, and we need someone that's going to be able to keep a level head. And I think he'll be able to do that because he just has the experience. So I know not everyone is sold on Zach Williams, but I think he's really important to our side. And I think he was really hitting his straps just before he got injured. So it was really disappointing, and I was really upset for him.
Well, with Zach Williams, I mean, I can understand why people were a bit annoyed last year, but my whole thing with him is that he came in from a Giants team that was used to winning to a team that honestly had no idea coaching-wise. So he was not put into a good structure, whereas this year you can tell under a good structure he thrives. He's very important. I think just with Saad providing that run of half-back, there's not a lot of places to go, in all honesty. And you have Saad on the right, Williams on the left. You can go either way. Whereas Saad, you can tell at the moment he doesn't know which way to go sometimes, because he's used to just going down the one side, but now he's struggling a bit. So yeah, it sucks. It really
Our
does suck.
backline, man. Our backline and injuries, they seem to just go hand in hand this season. And, you know, that's the other thing. I mean, good teams are good, and it doesn't matter who gets injured. But if you look at all the final success in the last few years, you've got to have a bit of luck in terms of injuries. Like, you can't have your whole backline out. So yeah, it'll be interesting, but I'm really bummed for Zach Williams, and I really hope that his rehab goes well and he can hit the ground running and doesn't, you know, the injury doesn't go longer and longer and longer, and all of a sudden he's out till next year. So yeah.
And let's go back to Charlie Kerner. We were speaking about it before. This was one of those games where he didn't have much of an impact, which wasn't a bad thing. And I think our forward 50 entry was quite poor most of the time. I think we kept trying to force it and make it happen for Charlie, but it wasn't. And I was a bit frustrated that we had all those smalls that make leads, that get in the right positions most of the time. We weren't using them. And it took until the 4th quarter. And when he got that goal, you knew game over. I was pretty confident after that point. When he clicks, he clicks.
Yeah, I was really proud of Charlie. I'm using proud a lot, and I think it's because just this year, it's just been a proud year to be a Carlton supporter, seeing where we've come from. But I was really proud of Charlie because, you know, we know how good he can be when he's in front of goals and he's kicking goals and providing that spark. But something I didn't know he had was the selflessness to just not get those goals in the first 3 quarters and just be at every contest trying to get it down to the smalls, because that was the only way we were going to be able to get through that game. And Voss spoke on it really highly in the post-match, because I think it was something that needed to be highlighted, because he was just so selfless. And I'm glad he got those 2 goals late, because it rewarded him for all the hard work he put in throughout the game.
Well, I think we've sort of summarised in the right way. And before we move on to the next guest, I want to talk to you about the end of season. Like, what are your expectations? I want to get everyone's expectations, their predictions. You know, what are your overall thoughts from round 1 to 11? And what do you expect from rounds 13 to 23? Talk to me, predictions. Where do you want to be when October hits, pretty much?
So I think a one-word summary of rounds 1 to 11 is proud. I'm really, really proud. And I think looking forward, had you asked me 48 hours ago what I would want, where I'd want to be sitting round 23, I would have said in the top 4. Now, we all know we've lost Weeders. We don't know how long for yet. I think 4 will be tough. I think making it to the top 4 will be extremely tough without Weeders for most part of the next few weeks. But I think the 8 is a non-negotiable. We cannot drop out of the 8. We just can't. And we can't let Weeder's injury or the injury list be an excuse, because how we've performed the first 11 weeks shows that we are one of the best teams in the competition. I mean, only a week ago, they were talking about us being the only team that looks likely to be competitive with Melbourne. So I think, I think the top 4 will be tough with the injury list we currently have, but I think the top 8 is a non-negotiable. And I would really like to see us win a final, because I don't want to just make the finals and then be an Essendon and drop out. In terms of losses, I want the losses to be similar to the Collingwood loss. And that sounds really, really random. But moving forward, we are going to lose more games. We're not going to go undefeated for the remainder of the season. But I think after the Collingwood loss, I felt proud still. And I think we could have easily just flopped after Wiedering went down, and it could have all got a bit too hard. So I think that's how I want to see the next second half of the season pan out. It's not too hard. We are one of the best teams in the competition when we're playing our best brand of footy. So we just need to keep grinding through. So I'm excited. I'm a lot more worried than I was 48 hours ago, because Weeders is a very important player. But yeah, I'm really excited for the second half. And in terms of the first half, I'm just proud, and I'm really excited for the future of this group based off what we've seen.
Well, look, thank you for joining me, Kirra. You'll definitely be someone that will be back on this channel come the end of the season. Yeah, thank you for joining me today. If you, like I said, if you're at Piranha Park, go down and listen to Kirra's voice during a Coburg match day. But until then, thank you, Kirra. Let's hope your predictions are correct, as like many others have said so far. And yeah, thank you, Kirra, and we'll touch base soon.
Thank you for having me.
On to the last part of the mid-season review. I'm joined by Ari Stamatakos. Welcome back, Ari. You've been doing some great things since we've last talked. So why don't you go over that for me and tell the people what you've been up to?
Well, thanks for having me back on, mate. It's a pleasure. It's just been real keeping on my end. Just got obviously the writing still good. Obviously working with Terry and Blue and Raw, which is good fun as always. And then obviously working with the Inner Sanctum and Stats Insider, which is good fun. I'm enjoying my time there. And then obviously I've got a podcast speaking on the round ball. So if I know obviously we're recording this after the Collingwood game. So if you want to take your mind off that and listen to some soccer talk, some soccer chat, just 2 Footer Tackle podcast on all the socials and on YouTube as well. So that's where you'll find me.
So let's get it right into it. Round 10, we're up to I felt like this was the biggest match in terms of like occasion in a long time, like a Friday night against a relatively big club, speaking in Victoria as well. When you look back at South Melbourne roots and Indigenous round, it was I was quite excited for this game, and it was really weird as well. I sort of forgot that it was a Friday night game until the Thursday night, since we're not used to it. And look, they really stood up, and I wasn't very confident. And wow, it was quite a good game to be at, even though it was stressful. But probably our best second quarter of the year.
Yeah, probably our best quarter of the season, I reckon.
It was just insane to see us take it, and I think the pressure as well from the media of this is their first top 8 team battle, I guess, in a sense. Sydney weren't in great form really coming in, so it was even more important in that sense to keep pressing them and keep pushing them, and we stood up. What were your thoughts from that game?
I mean, it was some game. I think from start to finish, it was always. I think I don't think anyone expected for it to be a blowout from both ways, either Sydney or Carlton winning. I thought it was always going to be an arm wrestle, but when you pile on 9 goals in the quarter, it just exuded and expressed just how good we can be. If we've got, we obviously were missing Harry Mackay, we were missing some players in the forward half as well that game. So it just showed that, something's building, something really special is building when we're on. We're one hard team to beat. So I think that game showed at our best we are one of the best teams in the comp. which we haven't been able to say in a very, very long time.
Well, I guess forward-wise, we've been kicking very high scores lately.
Yeah.
A lot of over 100s, that's crazy. And I even remember back to that, what was it like? Wasn't it like a 50-game streak or something like that? Where we couldn't even kick over 100. And then you go back to that Bulldogs game where Walsh kicked one after the siren, and that was could be talked about for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And now it happens every week, and it's fun, very fun. And I think our small forwards are pretty much the key to that, like kicking over 100 points. And I've sort of found with them that when they kick, when we play well, when we kick high scores, they're pretty hot. They're on the ball, they're reading the crumb well. But I feel like when we don't play as well, they're not having much of an impact. And as much as you can talk about Harry and Charlie clicking, I think they're quite an instrumental part as well. And I think that's where our game plan has fallen down a bit when they don't click. Motlop, was that his first game?
Second game.
Second game.
Giants the week before.
What have you made of him so far?
I mean, he's played 3 games now, so it's still very early to judge and very unfair to judge, I think, as well. But he's exciting. I feel like he's probably the most unique out of the 3 that we've got, because you have Owies, who is your kind of very systematic type player. You know where you're going to get from. He's consistent goal kicker as well. You know that he's going to kick goals more often than not. Then you have Durden. He's your pressure forward. Like he's your pressure forward. And he's the one that will get up the ground a little bit more, because I think he's got the best ball use out of the 3. And then you have Motlop, who's seeming to be that just excitement machine, which could be mercurial at times. He could go a couple of games without kicking a goal, but then he'll kick 6 1 week, and I feel like that's going to be something that we're going to have to just ride with him, especially early on in his career. But he's got 2 mates next to him who will more than carry the load if he's having a down game. So yeah, I'm been excited with what I've seen so far. I just hope that we give him time. I don't want to see him dropped anytime soon if he has a couple of bad games, because I just want to see that consistency and that continuity breathe through when he's still only a kid.
No, I agree with you. What the sense I'm getting is he knows what he wants to do with it, but he just hasn't had that opportunity. Yeah. And once he breaks through, we're
he's waiting
in trouble.
Yeah, he's waiting for that breakout game, which I think a lot of people are waiting for that breakout game. Slightly off topic, but the Koning struggled a little bit early this year. Then he had a breakout game against the Giants. So I thought he played really, really well. And even against the Swans, played really well. And then we're going to see his game just progress from there. Motlop is just waiting for that game where the ball bounces to him favourably. He gets a couple of free kicks. Just things go his way. And then he'll get the confidence, and then he'll build from there. But I'm really excited from what he's getting so far, what we're getting out of him even.
I'm going to touch on one incident that happened during the game, which pissed me off a lot, was the Kennedy hit. The Kennedy knock on Doherty.
Yeah.
I hated it, and I was really pissed off. And I can understand, okay, look, he was going for the ball, but he wasn't really close to it when it happened.
Yeah. So where were you watching the game from at that time?
I was interchange side, level 3, right in the middle. So, it was on the other side of me.
Yeah, okay.
It was not.
But you had a pretty good view of it, like straight on, yeah.
Good enough, yeah.
I was basically watching it from like the worst possible scenario, like place, because I was on that wing, but I was level 3, but towards the opposite end of the ground. So I was like looking at it from a 90-degree angle. So I didn't really see it. I was just happy that everyone remonstrated, because fair hit or not, when Doc's down with a broken nose, or not a broken nose, but with a bloody nose, if any player's down with that sort of injury, you go and remonstrate, right? So I was happy with that. I saw the bump back. Regardless of what happened, he did his hamstring doing it, so that's karma. But yeah, it wasn't a good look. But I think if a Carlton player did that, we'd be pretty happy that he went in hard. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was a dog act, but it was on the line, wasn't it? It was on the line.
It was very on the line. After that Plowman incident from the Hawthorn game, I've been really pissed off, like, ever since.
Well,
Any incident that happens.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from there.
The precedents that have been set they're not consistent. That's why it's like, oh, will he even get a week? Will he even get this? Will he even get this sort of thing?
I mean, we go back to the Lu Xiang incident. As fair a bump as you'll see, and he got. I mean, I know he got overturned, but like, come on now.
Look, actually, one more thing on this game. What has surprised me a lot, and I think it was with the Hawthorn game as well. The Swans got it down to, I think, 10 points, and there was still 13 minutes on the clock, and I'm pretty sure Hawthorn did a really similar thing. I can't remember, but it was very close, and it was still like 8.5 minutes. I've been pretty impressed that they've been able to hold teams off for like really, really long periods of time.
Yeah, I feel like that's a Michael Voss initiative. I don't think that's like obviously the players have to be given credit, no shit, but like I think Michael Voss has really instilled that just play your way and things will, like, we've got this. Like, I feel like if you go back and watch that Hawthorn game, go back and watch the last quarter of the Sydney game, we didn't waver from our tactics at any stage. We didn't go to a plan B, if that makes sense. We didn't change the way we were progressing the ball forward or like taking territory. We were just playing our way and trusting our way, and our way has got us over the line before, and it did again. So, I mean, I'm really happy that we're able to keep our heads when the pressure's on.
I don't know how you got home that night, but walking back to Southern Cross was just like
walking out of Marvel at that. Like, I said to my mate, I was like, at uni, I was like, imagine the vibes if we win on the weekend. Imagine the vibes if we're 9-2 in the top 4, and it was everything I could have dreamed of and more. It was the most united I've ever seen the Carlton fan base in a long time.
Oh, it was just, I haven't seen, like, it's weird, and you haven't either. Like, we haven't seen a fan base so up and about. And literally the only time I can remember is that 13 Ealing final. That's it. Yeah. And that was Richmond fans crying around you, innit?
Yeah.
Even sweeter. Yeah. Well, let's move on to the game. You don't want to talk about it, but we have to talk about it.
What I don't know what game you're talking about.
No. Look.
We had the bye this week, no?
Look, we played Collingwood's grand final this week.
Yes, we did. So,
I mean, personally, and I think it was for you, we were both pretty tired anyway going into this, just purely because of Champions League final stuff. And I didn't have the energy to get annoyed at this game, even if we were losing. And I'm glad I didn't, because I feel like this would have just driven me nuts the whole time. Look, 4-point loss, I think, makes the score look better than what it really was, in all honesty.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like, well, if the Pies kick straight, the game's over at halftime, let's be honest.
Well, that's what I was thinking. And then they kept us in the game. They kept us in the game and made a game out of it, which good on them. Could have been much more boring than what it was. But, I guess we start with Wiedering and where that puts us now, because we've lost a key forward, a key back, and luckily we haven't lost a key midfielder as of yet, because I'm sure it will happen.
Yeah, but, no, we got luck.
Oh, okay. If Wiedering was on,
we win that
game. You think we win that game?
Quite comfortably.
I don't look. I disagree purely because I think it was just a transitional thing. We weren't switched on enough.
Yeah, but
in a sense,
when you take, I mean, the way I look at it is, it could have been Wiedering, it could have been Cripps, it could have been Charlie Kerner, it could have been any of our key players. When you take a key player out of a team during the game, it completely just transforms the dynamic of both teams. So all of a sudden Collingwood get more confidence. All of a sudden Collingwood feel like they can take a little bit more risks going forward and in defence as well. Because if, like, say Nathan Murphy, I think, played one of the best games of his life.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that happens if Wiedering is playing, because he won't be taking those risks, because he knows, fuck it, or if I stuff up and they kick a goal it's going to be harder for us to get one back. Whereas he's thinking, all right, even if we cop one, they're depleted down back. We just get it down there. We're going to kick them more often than not. So it completely changes the dynamic of the game. And then obviously, from a forward sense, Ollie Henry got off the chain. Jack Ginnivan probably should have kicked more goals than he did. I'm happy he didn't, and I'm happy he was relatively quiet. But these forwards wouldn't be able to get the space and the time and the freedom if Wiedering was down there. And then obviously you have the intangible stuff. He's a leader. He's our defender. Like, he's the general back there. So when you take that leadership, take that experience away, it's going to hurt you a lot more than what just losing another defender will be.
Well, what changes do you make going forward? How because you can't replace him. There's no one you can replace him with as a person. There's no one. And look, even if you had Liam Jones still on that team, I still don't think he would do the job. No. And we got Marchbank coming back, but they're not the same player, not the same type of player. I don't know. I'm really stuck. The only person I think you can really put in a full back position is like a Lewis Young type. But even still.
Well, we've got the bye, so we don't have a game this week, which helps. Helps recovery and just helps to think what we're going to do. Like, the coaching staff will be so grateful we've got a bye so that we can actually figure out what we're doing. My mind immediately went to Brody Camp, which is very risky.
Yeah.
But I do feel like regardless of what happens, Lewis Young moves to that full back role, moves to that key back, and moves to that number one forward. Whether it's Marchbank if he returns, whether it's Brody Camp, whether it's Lockie Plowman and we go small in defence, whether it's a Jack Silvani, because I feel like if anyone's missed to fix it, he will go back and do a job, no problem. Regardless of who it is, I have my confidence in this side's ability to win games has diminished a lot, because we've lost players before, and the next man up mantra has been floated around, which is great, but Jacob Waring is not just a man, he's not just a player. He's our biggest loss of the season by a comfortable stretch.
Look, I think it's going to take me a while to process that it's going to be a hard next couple of weeks, because it's just weird because we're winning. It's look, we're one player out, we'll be all right. But I'm sure we'll be all right. And I'm very grateful Essendon are our next opponent, and maybe I'm speaking too soon, but I think for a team that probably needs confidence when they're a bit depleted in terms of just, team-wise, I think Essendon is a good game where you can go out, and it might not be as easy as what they think, but at least they're a team you want to test out a sort of new game style with. Yeah,
and also it allows you to get emotionally invested in the game. So it's if we lost Wiedering, say to and Wolversing, whoever, let's just say Hawthorn, right? A team that we don't have that rivalry with. We would have not been allowed to get into the game more because the care factor and the excuse factor would have been there. Whereas it's Collingwood, there's no excuses. So we could have lost 3 players. We still would have made a game of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, we saw that with Pittenay and Cripps. 2 games, we lost a player mid-game. Confidence dropped. Motivation dropped, everything dropped, and then we lost. So, it sucks. After 3 games we've lost this season, we've lost 3 of our most important players in each of them.
Look, it's really crazy that we're doing this well, considering the way
we've got 6 of our starting 22 out minimum.
Look, I've got the injury list up here, and I'm going to read out the names that are. I'm not sure. I think this is updated as of last week. Cunningham, Ed Kerner, Marchbank, Martin, Omac, Harry, McGovern, Alex Murkov, Jack Nunes, he was back, Luke Parks, Mark Pittenay, and Zach Williams. Not all of those players would come back in, but
well, Mackay.
It's hefty.
Mackay, Pitto, Williams, Wiedering now. That's 4. Then I think Martin's in our best 22, so that's 5.
Yeah.
I think it's either Marchbank or McGovern, because I think they play very similar roles in terms of that floating third defender. So 6. Who else? Cunningham, I think he's in our best 22. That's 7. I mean, we've got a lot out.
Oh,
I forgot about Williams, to be honest. Oh my god.
yeah.
Wow.
This is weird. This is the way I'd love them to think about it. And this is what the Celtics have been doing. This is NBA. This is basketball talk now. But this playoffs has been called, in a sense, a revenge tour. All these teams that have beaten them in the past, quite embarrassingly in big moments, they've beaten them all. And I'd love this to be like, we've been thumped by some team. We've been absolutely killed. Like even Essendon handed us some, not thumpings, but when they were in that drug scandal and they had half a team and they were still knocking us off. There's Brisbanes that have smashed us.
The Giants.
Even Melbourne Giants. Like, I'd love this to be a revenge tour type thing. And I wish we had our full team.
Well,
but there's still.
Well, let's just. Obviously, we're going to have some injuries, right? So it's pretty unrealistic to say that we're going to have our full 22 every single game. That's just not how footy works. Let's just say that we only had 2 or 3 of our best 22 out. I say we beat Freo over there, to be honest. Well, put it this way. If Cripps doesn't go down against Gold Coast, I think we're a big chance of winning that game. I know we were completely off it, but still, I feel like we had a big chance of winning that game. And if Wiedering doesn't go down against the Pies, we win that game. So it's, I mean, you can't use injuries as an excuse because like every team gets injuries. But if you take out 6, and not only 6, but it's 3 key position players in Wiedering, Pitto, and Mackay. So if you take out May, Gawn, and Ben Brown from the Melbourne team, it's going to have some sort of impact.
Look, it's going to be a real interesting second half, and it's completely different now to the first half because that first half was, will we start well? And we did. And now it's the sense of, will we finish well? Because at this halfway stage, we're just used to where will we finish on the ladder? Will it be 14th, 15th, 16th? Now it's like, where will we keep this momentum up? And it's so weird.
Are you afraid that we've peaked too early? Because that's something that I constantly hear is you got to time your run. I mean, we saw the Bulldogs in 2016 time their run to perfection. They played their best footy in September.
I think we've slumped at the perfect time, if anything. I think this loss came at the best time. And
I mean, you look at Melbourne last year. They had that little patch
in the middle.
In the middle of the year, yeah.
Look, there's nothing wrong about hitting your peak early, purely because at least you look at that and think, okay, I know we can play this way. And as a team, you know that's your standard. And I don't think, there is this thing of taking your opportunity, but I don't think this team needs to focus on peaking at the right time. Like, it would be great, but like the same time, the scenario we're in where it could be first time in a while we've made finals, like, I just want to get in.
Yeah.
And get that experience, know that, okay, we've got here once, we're doing this now again, and we can do this. And then it's sort of, you get more into it. But I think it's just been good. This first half's just been good. Come at the right time, a break where you've had some losses that can be worked on pretty well. Yeah. And take that in. And even with a side that's not, 100%, still going to be competitive. I don't see why they can't win these games still. We're not the only team with injuries, and as much as ours are pretty bad, it's always a way to beat an opposition. Yeah.
I mean, we've got the Bombers next game in 2 weeks' time. So if we come out, I mean, it's going to be a game which is set in the first half. If we come out in the first half like we did against the Swans, I feel like there's no coming back for the Bombers. I feel like we're just going to put them to the sword. And if we come out like we did against the Pies, injuries or not, it's going to be a game, and we can't let it be a game. Because if any team can win a game off emotion, it's Essendon.
That's very true. That is very true. The game that I'm more worried is the Richmond game.
Yeah, that's scary.
That's one game that I think if there's any game we get like our asses whooped, it's that game.
Yeah,
but not like just one of those games. I think it will be that.
I mean, I don't look too far ahead because it's in 3 weeks, but it could be one of those games where it's just they're angry. We beat them round 1. They've still got that chip on the shoulder. They want to show. It's kind of like we're that little brother that has finally got a good shot in, but they're going to come back and they're going to be like, no, we're still the kings around here. Like, I feel like that could happen.
And that's where the video cuts off. Me and Ari talked a bit too long, so I've split it into 2 parts. That's the end of the first part, which is round by round review. Part 2 will be out very shortly, which will be a player analysis where we go through each player and give a bit of a grade and a review so far. Hope you enjoyed that. My predictions for the back half, I'm hoping for anything above 6, and I think anything above 13 wins would be a great achievement, but getting to 12 wins is most important. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know your comments, what you thought of the first half of the season below, and go Blues.